All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my FB Live. First of all, I hope that all of you are staying home and staying safe. And once again, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all the Corona warriors who are fighting this battle for all of us. So, today we are going to talk about leadership lessons from the book Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Now, why did I think about this? So there were two, three things that I should talk to you about, and the format is going to remain exactly the same. That I'm going to speak for about 10 odd minutes, and thereafter I'll start taking questions from you. Or if there's a particular excerpt from the book that you would want me to talk about, I'll talk about that. Of course, I have the book right here with me, and I have some excerpts of it marked down for myself as well. Now, you know, when you talk about leadership depends on two things. First of all, leadership can be learned. And that is something we need to be very, very clear about, because if leadership could not be learned, then there was absolutely no point in me talking about leadership. Now, leadership can be learned, and leadership comes from two things. One is passion, and the other is perspective. And when you build perspective both through reading as well as experiencing. And the best way of experiencing, I mean, you can experience life any which way, but there are many ways of experiencing life. You can visit places, you can meet people, you can watch movies, you can watch serials on the TV, you can watch art, you can watch architecture, and of course, you can read great works. Now, when you read these great classics, when you read these great books, they take you through a particular time and space. They take you through an experience that somebody has had, predominantly the experience of the protagonist therein. And therefore, very useful and very insightful lessons can be drawn from literature. I was first exposed to it when I was studying at IIM Ahmedabad, and we used to have a subject called LVMR, Leadership, Vision, Meaning, and Reality, which I was taught by Professor Manikutty. And that set me thinking that yes, we can actually draw leadership lessons from some great classics, provided we have a structured way of looking at that particular book. And therefore, when I was teaching at IIM Lucknow, I offered an elective along with a colleague of mine, Professor Neerja Pandey, called Leadership Through Literature. And this particular piece, The Alchemist, is actually one of those books. So there are two announcements I want to make before I actually pick up this particular topic. One is that we are going to, in my FP Live, I'm going to pick up one book every month. So one of the Saturdays that I talk to you, that I interact with you, will be spent with one book. And the second is that there's been a lot of requests to me asking me to do my FP Live sessions in Hindi. And therefore, we are going to alternate from next week onwards. So I'll do one Saturday in English and the other Saturday in Hindi. Now, coming back to leadership, why Alchemist? Now, Alchemist is a beautiful story by Paulo Coelho, of course, originally written in Portuguese and subsequently translated into many, many languages, and one of the best sellers in the world. It's a story of this protagonist called Santiago, who is taking this journey to find a treasure. He has a vision about a treasure. And of course, it's all allegorical. That treasure is actually his vision. What is it that he really wants from his life? And in his journey, he ends up meeting a lot of people. And when he meets those people, he actually draws a lesson from each of them and also from the experiences that he has. So, one of the ways in which we have tried to structure this particular talk, the Leadership Through Literature course, as well as this particular talk that I'm doing, is that with every piece of literature that I talk about, there is a theme attached to that particular book. And the theme attached to Alchemist is called vision and action. And therefore, we are going to look at this particular book from these two lenses, vision and action. What is vision? Vision is that it's that philosophical statement about what is it that you wish to achieve. Vision for an organization is what is the purpose of the organization, and vision for you as an individual is what is the purpose of your life. Please remember, it is very different from goal. So your vision can't be that I'm going to become the general manager in the next 5 years, I'm going to become the CEO of my organization in the next 10 years, so on and so forth. Those are goals. Vision is a long term philosophical perspective where you say, I want to create a world which is more equal. And subsequently, you can choose whatever path that it takes for you to reach over there. So that is vision. The second is action. Now, what is an action? Action is the act of doing something with three elements in it. The first element is direction, because the action always has to have a sense of direction. You need to be acting in a certain way. The second is intensity. How intense is your first attempt towards that particular act? And the third is persistence. Are you persisting, or did you just put in the action in the first go and thereafter you haven't been talking about it or you haven't been doing anything about it? So please remember, action necessarily needs to have these three elements. And in here lies the context. Vision without action is merely a dream, because all you are doing is thinking and thinking, but you're not actually translating it, you're not actually executing it. Action without vision is a waste of time, because you don't even know. It's like going to the railway station and getting into any train that you saw, the first train that you saw, you don't even know where it is headed, you don't even know where it is that you're going to reach, and therefore it's a complete waste of time. Vision with action is what can really change the world. And with that particular theme, we try to look at Alchemist and what are those valuable lessons. So, for those of you who have read this book, of course, I need not give you the entire synopsis of the book, but those of you who haven't read the book completely or haven't read the book at all, this is the story of a protagonist called Santiago who goes out on a journey and he meets many people in that particular journey to find his treasure. Some of them, those characters, and I'm telling you about this so that when you go read the book, you will have a perspective as to what is it that you should be looking for. You have the old woman who he meets, and she asks him for something. And therefore, the lesson from that was that for everything that you do in your life, there will always be a cost. Are you willing to pay the cost as a leader? The second person that he meets is the king of Salem, Melchizedek. Salem is the old name for Jerusalem, and he learns a very valuable lesson. And thereafter, he meets a crystal merchant from whom he learns a lot. And then he meets Fatima, the love of his life, and subsequently the Englishman, and finally the alchemist. And with each of these characters, his interaction with them, his experiences with them, his learning with them, the way they talk to each other and the way they exchange thoughts, there is wonderful amount of knowledge to be actually gleaned from all of this. I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs from this particular book, which are my favorite. And then, as I can see a lot of good afternoons there. Good afternoon to all of you. I would rather that you tell me which particular excerpt would you want me to talk a little bit on. Now, my most interesting part that I found in this particular book, there are two, in fact. One is where Paulo Coelho actually speaks to Santiago, where he says, everyone, when they're young, they know what their destiny is. At that point of time in their lives, everything is clear. They are not afraid to dream and to yearn for everything that they want in their lives. And what it means is that when we are young, we actually let our imagination fly. We actually give wings to our dreams. And therefore, he says to realize your own destiny is your only real obligation. Ladies and gentlemen, please remember, you don't owe anything to the rest of the world. What you owe the first thing to is to you yourself. And that is to figure out what is your swadharma. What is your real destiny? What is it that forms the purpose of your life? And then you have to make sure that you act upon it. You act upon it, you start walking in that particular direction, and you continue to walk till you actually reach wherever it is that you thought you were headed to. Charai Vaiti, Charai Vaiti. And that is where, of course, Paulo Coelho says something that Shah Rukh Khan said in Om Shanti Om. Uh, when you really want something, the entire universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. Shah Rukh Khan said something, Sare Kainat ki. But please remember, Paulo Coelho said it first. In Portuguese, of course, but he was the one who said it first. And therefore, let me very quickly come to some of these things. My most favorite part is a part where, if you have the book in front of you, please turn to page number 59. Page number 59. Now, Santiago receives a gift, and this gift are two stones. And these stones are called Urim and Thummim. Now, there's a literal translation to these two. Urim actually means lights, and Thummim means perfections. And if you look at the meaning as to what is meant by these allegorical terms, light means revelation and perfections means truth. And these are the stones which help him in making the decision. So please remember, even in your life, when you try to make decisions, there will always be these two things which will help you in making these decisions. The first is the revelations. What are revelations? Revelations are those things which are given to you, perhaps by your family, perhaps by the society, perhaps by your education, perhaps by your religion, because they tell you this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. And that is one of the yardsticks with which we actually make our decisions. However, apart from Urim, you also have the Thummim. And that's where Paulo Coelho, through this book, Alchemist, is trying to tell you that you can also reach the truth by yourself. It doesn't have to be revealed to you, but you can reach the truth. And of course, there are multiple ways of reaching the truth. Just to get a little bit philosophy into this perspective, please remember that truth can be achieved through multiple logical methods. The most common of them are deduction and induction. Deductive logic is when you have two given axioms, and based on those two axioms, you can draw your conclusion. For example, let's say an axiom is all cows are black, the first axiom, which is a statement of truth. And there is a second statement which says A is a cow. If you have these two statements of truth, you can draw a conclusion saying A is black. So please remember, this is deductive logic and it is absolutely accurate so long as the initial two statements of truth hold. And then you have the inductive logic, which is going from specific to general. So, for example, let's say I have these statements of truth by observation, by empirical observation, that cow A is black, cow B is black, cow C is black, cow D is black. Ergo, I draw a conclusion saying all cows are black. Please note, inductive logic will never be accurate for the simple reason that you have not seen all the cows. And the moment you see one cow which is not black, that particular logic goes away. The Western philosophy actually looks at these two elements of logic, but the Indian philosophy looks at a third logic as well. And that is what they call transcendental logic, which means that you sit in a lotus posture and you start looking inwards, and you might find answers through introspection and through reflection. Be that as it may, it is your choice as to how do you want to reach the truth. But please remember, you have both of these stones available to you exactly like Santiago did. So this is so far as my interpretation of Alchemist and a very, very quick history and a synopsis of Alchemist is concerned. Now, I urge all of you to ask me questions, or if you want a particular para to be spoken about, I still see good afternoons, good afternoons, lots of good afternoons. LVMR, please repeat. So, LVMR, Vijayendra, is leadership, vision, meaning, and reality. Leadership, vision, meaning, and reality. You know why? Because when you read literature, you develop these four things that I've spoken about. One is a perspective, and that is a mental view of the relative importance of things. What is important, what is not. For example, they say that fools don't learn at all. Some people learn from their own mistakes, but wise people learn from other people's mistakes. And when you read a variety of literature, you form certain perspectives given the discourses and given the stories that the protagonists in those books have actually experienced. The second thing that you get is versatility. Versatility in the sense you develop a capacity for dealing with multiple situations, because every book is actually located in a very specific space and time. And when you travel through these multiple spaces, when you travel through these multiple time periods, you always have something new to learn. The third thing is understanding. You also develop empathy. You also develop understanding. You also develop sensitivity, because a lot of these books bring out the human emotions in their raw and varied forms. And finally, what you also get from reading books is a vision. As I said, it gives you some kind of a philosophical underpinning about the kind of a world that you would want to see yourself in. So that is LVMR, Vijendra. I see more good afternoons. What if someone, Ranti is asking, what if someone applies servant leadership style on dominant subordinates? Is it doomed to fail or can be practiced successfully? Ranti, I think it can be practiced very, very successfully. In fact, I'm glad that you asked me this question, because servant leadership, once again, the concept of servant leadership itself is derived from one of the literary pieces, and that literary piece was Hermann Hesse's work. Hermann Hesse is a German author. In fact, one of the books that I am going to take up in one of these Saturdays is Siddharth by Hermann Hesse. The book that Hermann Hesse has talked about when it comes to the servant leadership is a completely different one. But what servant leadership means is that you, as a leader, can rate yourself to be successful if you make yourself redundant by creating more and more leaders. And that's what a servant leader does. So, for example, when I took over the charge of this place at IIM Indore, the only thing that I did by going to everyone is asking them to tell me, how can I make their lives better? How can I make their lives easier? What is it that I can do to make them happier? And if you can achieve that in your organization or in any collective that you're a part of, be it your family, be it your organization, be it your city, be it your state, country, or this world, if you can make people around you happier, if you can make their life easier, you are a true leader. So, Ranti, yes, it'll work irrespective of whether your subordinates are dominant or not. The only thing that you will need to make sure of is that you keep things into perspective and do not bring your ego in, because that is the first thing that gets a little flushed and fluttered the moment you have a person dominating towards you. Possibly, I'll also talk about the role of power in one of my talks here. Akshat, please go ahead and ask. I mean, thank you for those very, very kind words that I deliver with the same energy and passion wherever it is. And that is simply because, as I pointed out, even when we are talking about leadership, leadership is all about passion and perspective. And the passion comes from your heart. If you really love whatever it is that you're doing, you will do it with all the passion and the energy. And I've said it on multiple occasions before that my true identity is not as the director of I Am Indore. My true identity is that of a teacher and a mountaineer, because these are the two things that I draw my passion from. And so long as you are applying your passion with perseverance and persistence, you will always be happy no matter what work you're doing. The crystal merchant, and so this is a very interesting perspective. When Santiago meets a crystal merchant, the crystal merchant also has a vision, or so he thinks. And crystal merchant says, I want to go to Mecca. I want to do the Hajj. And Santiago is a little bewildered and he says, why haven't you done so? And the crystal merchant says, I have not done the Hajj yet. I haven't been to Mecca yet because I know that if I do it, I wouldn't have a reason to live any further, because whatever it is that I wanted, the pinnacle of my desire happens to be doing the Hajj. And the moment I achieve it, what do I live for? And herein lies a very important lesson. What the crystal merchant is talking is merely one of the stops in the journey. And which is why I told you right in the beginning, never mistake your goals for your vision. Goals are very, very different. Milestones in your life are very, very different. What really matters is what is your overall vision. Please remember, your overall vision gives you a sense of direction. It doesn't give you a sense of reaching out there, which means that you will perhaps never reach your destination. So if I say I want to create an equal world, or if I say I want to create responsible leaders, if I say I want every person on this universe, which happens to be my personal vision, to realize his or her potential, I'll perhaps never reach it. I'll perhaps never reach a point of time when all 7 billion people in this world have actually realized their true potential. But I have a sense of direction. I know where should I be headed. And everything that I achieve in terms of either numbers, in terms of either designations, are merely milestones. Please remember, life is not about milestones. Life is what is happening to you between these milestones. And therefore, try to draw your joy not from the milestones, but from the journey itself. So Shashikala is asking, what is the true meaning in the climax when he stands firm against the elements of nature? The true meaning over there is that he becomes one with nature. He thinks that he cannot achieve it, and that is what the alchemist tells him, that you will have to become the wind. And he actually does become that. And what it means is that when you become one with nature, when you're not considering yourself as something which is separate, that is when you really figure out your true place in this universe. That is when you actually start looking at, and you start hearing, you start listening to those voices of the universal consciousness, the universal voice. This is where the maktub happens. So that is one of my favorite words from this book, maktub. And maktub doesn't mean that whatever has to happen will happen. Maktub to me is once again your destiny. And you realize your destiny only if you become one with the universe. And by becoming one with the universe does not mean that you achieve some kind of supernatural powers, but you realize that you are actually connected with the universe. And that is what, at the deepest level, you have to understand. Who are you really? What is the purpose of your life? What is the universe around you? And what is your relationship with that universe? And that is what, in the climax, Shashikala, Santiago gets to understand. How to cope with uncontrollable factors. I've said this before and I'll repeat it. Always divide factors, whatever is are coming your way. So Santiago has a lot of obstacles which come in. Some people think of obstacles in terms of, the money that he had to pay. He had to pay his sheep. He had to give his sheep away as part of the payment. And they also said that he had to give away his love. Now, please remember, love was not the cost that he paid. And I'm trying to get to that particular page where he talks about the love. And this was when he meets Fatima. And yeah, so these are the words, Vijayendra. You must understand that love never keeps a man from pursuing his destiny. If he abandons that destiny, it's because it wasn't true love. You can replace the man with the woman, you can replace his with her. It is basically that love will never keep anyone from achieving their destiny. And if it does take the person away from the destiny, then it was not true love. Please remember, true love always liberates. Love is when you let the other person be. And please remember, simply because if I love you does not mean that I'm going to agree with everything that you say, because that is not the meaning of true love. I would still disagree with you while making sure that that does not affect my love, that does not affect the respect I have for you, that does not affect the trust that I have for you. But if by loving you, if you expect that I'm going to agree with everything that you say and do exactly what you want, then this is not love, this is something else. And that is why you have to understand that sometimes in your life, you will have to pay a cost. In case of Santiago, he paid the cost through only material things. And yeah, so but coming back to your question, Vijayendra, so there are two categories of such things that may turn out to be obstacles in your life. One is what I call the area of influence, and the other I call can be bunched under area of concern. Area of influence are those things which you can actually influence, which you can actually do something about. For example, staying home, that's my area of influence. The fact that the coronavirus is out there, that is an area of concern. There's nothing I can do about that virus out there, but what I can do is what can I do to save myself, to protect myself? Wearing a mask, that's my area of influence. But what is happening out there is my area of concern. So don't bother too much, Vijayendra, about the things under the area of concern because they are not within your hands. But bother about those things. Make sure that you address those things which are within your area of influence. And this goes true for everything that you do in your life. Goki, Prabhash Gokan, it's so good to see you, my good old friend from Tata Steel days in Jamshedpur. I still have lots of good afternoons, and thank you so much. It's I you are glad to be a part of this webinar. You are glad to see me. I'm equally glad to see all of you, and I love you all back. Maktub is destiny. Maktub is destiny. Of course, there is a different meaning which can be interpreted from any of these lines, wherever the term Maktub comes in Paulo Coelho's Alchemist. But to me, it means destiny, not destiny in terms of something which was written, because that is the literal meaning of the word Maktub. It was written, which means it is not something in your hands. But to me, it is something that you write with your hands, not something which was written by somebody else for you. Is it always about leading from front, Balmukun? No, not always. Not always. But you must remember that sometimes you may have to lead from the back, but it always has to be from a perspective. I'll give you an example from my mountaineering days. So, in when we do an expedition, ideally, I lead from the front, or whoever is the group leader leads from the front simply to set the pace. But let's say you have set the pace and you realize that that pace is too much for many people, or if you realize that there are many people who are lagging behind, which means that the number of people who are laggards or slow are far too many as compared to the number of people who can keep a decent pace. In that case, while setting a pace, you might have to also come to the back at times and become the backbone of the group and solidly support and make sure that you're encouraging them to move a little faster. So, depending on the perspective, Balmukun, you sometimes have to lead from the front and sometimes you have to become the support system of a group. What is the difference between vision and goals? Like I explained, Sonu, vision is a more philosophical statement which talks about the purpose of your life, which talks about the very philosophical reason as to why do you exist. I'm talking about a personal vision. And in case of an organization, vision is a philosophical statement about why does that company exist. So for example, GE saying we bring good things to life. Now, look at what a brilliant vision it is. We bring good things to life. Because what GE is trying to say is that, first of all, they know what are good things. That's a statement they are making, that I know what good is. And then they are saying, we will make it happen. Now, that is a statement, a philosophical statement, which talks about the reason for that organizational existence. And when we talk about goals, we are talking about the milestones which we set for ourselves to reach those goals. So if GE says, and to achieve that, we are going to have at least 20 patents every month. We are going to have a surplus of this much every year. We are going to do this in so many years, so on and so forth. All of these are goals. Or, for example, in your case, you say that I'm going to write at least 3 books this year. I'm going to publish at least 5 papers in there. These are your goals. Or, like, for example, I said I'm going to do at least one FB live show every Saturday, every week. That is a goal. Whereas the vision is a more philosophical statement. If Sudhir, you got a very tricky one. Uh, Saying in book, if one thing happens twice, if twice, then surely the third time. And what it means is that people who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Which means if you do not learn from your experiences, if you do not learn from your mistakes, then those things will continue to happen in your life. So please remember, every experience, whether it is good or whether it is bad, has a lesson for you. And what you need to do as a leader is to be humble and accept the lesson which that experience has taught you. Otherwise, like what Sudhir pointed out, this book very clearly says that you're doomed to keep repeating that particular thing. So, uh, time really flies, and I can see that there are too many questions that I have not answered. So, what I'll probably do is that since this was the first book, and I think many of you have read this book, and there would be a lot of questions, perhaps I'll continue this session next Saturday as well. So, next Saturday, once again at 3 p.m., I'm going to continue with Alchemist and answer the rest of your questions. Thank you very much for joining me today. Stay home, stay safe. Thank you very much.